Welcome back, scientists, to our lecture videos for Honors Biology at Bishop McNamara. I am Miss Ray, one of your Honors Biology teachers, and I will be helping you learn the material for Lesson 2 of our unit, The Nature of Biology. Please have your paper handy and be ready to write. Just like with Miss Judd's videos for Lesson 1, we will be writing down notes specifically from the slides that have a pencil image on them. If it doesn't have a pencil image, don't worry about writing it down. We will also provide images that we think are helpful in the next class with our Do Now assignment. Let's get started.
Unit 1, Lesson 2, The Nature of Life. What criteria makes something living? To answer that question, we need to know what the 7 characteristics of life are. These 7 characteristics are very important to our understanding of living things. If an object is not capable of all 7 of these, we cannot define it as living. Even one would be a reason to exclude it. So we're going to go through these. I would, in my notes, list them sort of vertically so that it's in an organized manner. So number 1, cellular organization. This is the idea that a living thing is going to be made up of cells. It can be one cell, as in a bacteria, or it can be multiple cells in the case of a human. Number 2, heredity. This is the idea that living things are able to pass along genetic material in DNA, for example, from parent to offspring. Number 3, metabolism. Living things are going to have changes in chemistry within them, and also they will all need to obtain and use energy. Now, how they obtain that energy can be different. For example, plants are going to be able to directly obtain it from the sun. We as humans cannot do so. We obtain energy from the food that we eat. Number 4, grow and develop. This is nothing starts out fully grown, that there is going to be changes over time in a life cycle of an organism. And number 4, grow and develop. Nothing starts out fully grown. There are going to be changes in a living thing from its very beginning to the very end throughout its life cycle. Number 5, reproduce. All living things are capable of producing offspring. Now, whether they produce it asexually or sexually doesn't matter, but they're able to produce or create offspring. Number 6, respond to environment. This is the idea that living things are going to respond to what's around them. For example, in this image, this plant will actually turn to try to capture as much energy from the sun as it can by facing the light source. It's responding to where the light is in the environment. Living things are also able to adapt and evolve, and we see this in our populations of all living things. Number 7, maintain homeostasis. We need to define what homeostasis means. Homeostasis means same status. And all living things are going to be are able to create an internal balance system. In other words, when things get out of sync, or when ranges are, or when something is out of range, there are going to be changes within the organism to try to bring them back in range. For example, one type of homeostasis for humans is temperature. With temperature, when our bodies get too cold or too hot, our organs are no longer going to be efficient. They're not going to run as well, and it could lead to death. When we start to get out of range, our bodies are going to react. When we get too cold, our bodies start to shiver. That is, our muscles are contracting to produce heat that hopefully is going to raise our body temperature back up to acceptable ranges. When we get too hot, our body releases water in the form of perspiration or sweat to try to cool off our skin temperature to bring our body temperatures back down. Again, that's just one type of homeostasis that humans specifically do. There's tons of homeostasis actions that other living things do to also, again, maintain that internal balance. Now, moving away from characteristics of living things, we're going to talk about how living things interact in the environment. And to talk about that, we need to talk about both living things and non-living things. And we call these factors biotic factors and abiotic factors. So let's define them. we're going to discuss the two types of factors in an environment. The first type is biotic factor. And before we really get further into this, we need to understand that bio, which is a prefix of biotic, means life. So when we see bio, we can go on and say, oh, it has to do something with living. We're going to define a biotic factor as any living or used to be living part of the environment with which an organism might interact. We include the used to be living because some things die. Well, living things will die. And when they die, they still came from a living thing, so we still categorize them as a biotic factor. An example of this would be like a rotting log. It was a part of a tree which was living at one point in time, so it's considered a living thing. It's part of it's considered a biotic factor, even though it's not alive anymore. Other examples of biotic factors are like algae, a heron, which is a type of bird, a maple tree, a butterfly. There's tons of examples of biotic factors. Let's focus on abiotic factors. We see that bio in there, but notice that there is a letter A right in front of it. A is another prefix. In science terms, when we see A in the front of a vocabulary word, typically it means no or not. So when we take A and bio and put them together, it means no life. So it's a factor that does not include life. And we're going to define it as any non-living part of the environment. And there's tons of examples. You could list all of them from this image to the left, but some main ones would be like heat, water, or humidity, just for example. Now, the last thing that we want to talk about is that now that we've properly defined what a living thing is, we want to talk about what is the hierarchy or organization of living things in our world. So we're going to start at the very, very most simplistic organization of life, which is an organism. And we're going to define it as a living thing. And we're also going to list an example, in this case, a wildebeest. I also want you to write down that this is the smallest level of the organization of life. Now, the next step is going to be population. Population is a group of organisms of the same species, and this example would be a group of wildebeests. So it's one step up. It's not just one individual. It's again tons of them or a group of them, but they are of the same species. We've heard of population before. When we talk about populations with humans, we're talking about human population. We're talking about humans. We're not talking about humans, dogs, cats, birds, trees, grass. No, we're specifically talking about the human population. We talk about populations when you hear it talked about on TV or in social media. The next one is community. So when we're moving up and getting more and more diverse, or larger and larger in our organization. And so the next one is lots of different populations of different living things. And again, this is all of the populations in an area. An example, this would be wildebeests. Well, along with that would be zebras and lions and grasses and shrubs and trees. Again, any living thing that's in an area. Focus on the word, though, living. It's got to be biotic factors only. The next one is called an ecosystem. This is all of the abiotic and biotic factors in the area. In other words, you take all of the communities, you take the whole community with all of the living things, and then you start to add abiotic factors to it too. So you're going to have, again, grass, wildebeest, shrubs, zebra, lions, but now you're also going to have water, air, lower precipitation, warm temperatures, the sun, any abiotic factor that is also a part of that ecosystem. So this is the lowest level that includes both abiotic and biotic factors. Biomes also include biotic and abiotic factors, but instead, this is sort of a range of all of the ecosystems on the whole entire planet that share the same environmental conditions. So we look at them and they have the same climate, and they also have similar species of organisms that can live there. Examples of this for our specific example would be a savanna or a subtropical grassland. Some additional biomes, though, that we sometimes talk about are deciduous forests, taiga coniferous forest, tundra, desert. We can go on and on. There's tons of biomes out there. The last level of organization of life is biosphere. It also, again, contains both abiotic and biotic factors, but it's the entire planet with all of the organisms and physical environments. And our one example is going to be Earth. Earth is always our example of biosphere. We want to make sure that we mark this in our notes also as the largest level of organization. And this ends our notes for Unit 1, Lesson 2. Congratulations. In class, we're going to improve them by, again, adding additional graphic organizers and images to help us review for our quiz. Have a great day.